Hello. So, having just watched Michael Maxwell beat Ross Silcock 2-0, we've got the results from the other quarterfinals. Mats Volberg was victorious against Yulin Wong. Yulin Wong was playing the Jund deck with the aristocrats sort of semi-build to it, so the red deck wins was victorious there. Kayure Patel was also victorious against Ruperto Pancrazi. And finally, Andrew Devine beat up Rob Wagner. Rob Wagner's running the Jund deck, so Andrew Devine scraping through that one with Naya. How did we expect these sort of matchups to go?
I'd have thought that I thought Ross would have done a bit better against Michael, but as we saw, his draws were pretty appalling. He mulliganed to 4 in game 1 and then had 5 shots at a burn spell or a snapcaster mage in game 2 and missed. Matt's, I feel his deck is pretty well set up against John style decks. He's got a good sideboard against those decks, and I think that he'll go on to do well. He did well during the Swiss, and I think that he'll continue that way. Kayure against Roberto, it was Jund against green white sort of aggression. That can really come down to draws. I wasn't too familiar with the green white deck, but I think that Kayure's just sheer quantity of removal and sort of fat monsters will got him through that. Andrew Devine against Rob Wagner's an interesting one. We saw Rob beat Naya in the Swiss. He beat Ian Perroway playing Naya in the Swiss, so I thought that was always going to be a close matchup.
Anyway, so this leads to the semi-final matchups. So we have the number 4 seed Andrew Devine going second against Michael Maxwell, but the table that we will be covering for this round will be Kayure Patel, seed number 3. Nice to see the top 4 going through, I guess.
Yeah, that's. I mean, the fact that they all went first in their quarterfinals definitely lends some sort of credence to the theory that there is an advantage to finishing as high up the Swiss as you possibly can.
So Mats Volberg will be going first in that matchup, and let's crack right on with it. So there's no coin flipping here. Mats gets to go first, finishing on 24 points after the Swiss.
Yep, so big advantage for his red deck, and he's going immediately to shock himself and lair strong Kirk Noble. I think for Kaya, this is going to be a really. It's going to really depend on whether he has Farseek on turn 2 or just some kind of accelerant. He is actually playing both Arbor Elf and Farseek in this build, so he's really looking to accelerate.
Now, we had a chat to Mats, and I know throughout the day, and Matt's always a big fan of getting these elves off the table as fast as possible.
Yeah, the old-fashioned bolt the bird theory, it's still very true, and it's one of the reasons why I'm not too sure how much of a fan I am of Arbor Elf in this Jund build.
So, I mean, we know there's people who very often put elves in the deck as direct replacement to basic land.
Yeah, that can often lead to problems. I would see Matt's missed his second land drop there, so maybe a little bit of a dodgy keep on his behalf. And Kay is going to invite him to sacrifice a creature to devour flesh, and yeah, this isn't really the start that Mats would have wanted in this game. So let's see if he's got any follow-up.
Well, you'd like to think that if Mats had a second land, he'd have slammed it down on the table. He seems to have a long think there before playing his mountain.
Looks like he had a handful of 1-drops there, so it was a case of if he drew the second land, he'd go 1-drop into 2 1-drops, which without Bonfire would be very difficult for a Jund deck to deal with.
But now I'm certain we'll be seeing an endless stream of fat monsters from Kayure.
Yeah, you'd think so. Olivia's one of the better ones that he can produce. Bats will definitely be looking for a Searing Spear or just something to finish that Olivia off.
Can't see any blocks happening there.
No. And Boros Reckoner. Mats's deck's quite similar to the deck we saw. Yeah, it's quite similar to a deck we saw even 6 months ago that Carrie Oliver played in RSCGIQ. The deck's not changed that much. It's only really added Boros Reckoner to it, taken out some of the weaker 1-drops, and I suppose Mats is splashing black for Falcon Wrath, but that really only strengthens the deck, I think.
I think the only card missing from these mono red decks from even years gone by is something like a Wasteland.
I think that you just couldn't print Wasteland these days. You just couldn't. Creatures and aggressive decks in general have become so good that just 1-drop into 2-drop into Wasteland would be good night for pretty much every deck in Standard.
There's so many decks now that if you colour hose them, they just fall apart.
I mean, it was one of the main things that Wizards have emphasised, isn't it? That they don't want land destruction to be a viable strategy because it's not a...
Even Stone Rain was too good.
Yeah, because it's just basically not a fun... You know, it doesn't make Magic fun. Being mana screwed isn't fun.
Counter spells aren't fun either.
Uh,
No more counter spell, that went the wayside.
yeah, although Mark Rosewater did use the phrase maybe to describe if Counterspell would be reprinted, so blue players are kind of living in hope at the moment.
They'll probably bring it back as a mythic rare, or something like that.
Oh, they'd probably bring it back once Snapcaster Mage has decided to exit the room. Olivia's going to shoot Rakdos Cackler here and then do it again, so Olivia's now 5-5, so it's going to be pretty hard to beat through that. That's just making sure the old dice counters are correct there. So Mats has got a couple of 3/3s, and this is a situation red decks often find themselves in where the opponent's got sort of one monolithic permanent, and
They still get to double swing.
yep.
Kayure can't be happy about blocking, but at the same time really can't afford to go to 6.
Yeah, he can't afford not to block in this situation. I think the choice is Stromkirk Noble, not just for the reason that it grows, but also for the reason that he's not going to take 5 off Boros Reckoner.
We're probably going to see a burn spell here.
Yep, that's Pillar of Flame, so there goes Olivia.
If Mats didn't have the burn spell, does he just attack with the Reckoner by itself?
I think he just tries to get as much damage in as he can. It really depends what his hands is. If he's got Hellrider in hand, he probably just hangs back. Probably just attacks with the Reckoner.
Yeah, because he loses the game, right? If he doesn't get Olivia off the board that turn.
Yeah, I mean, Olivia probably just steals his Stromkirk Noble, kills his Stromkirk Noble this turn and goes to 8/8. And in fact, there is Hellrider.
What Mats would have wanted to see if it was any card.
So yeah, it's a case of if Mats didn't have the burn spell in hand, he probably plays that a bit differently, going for a Hellrider attack. And one thing that the red decks certainly today do quite well is they transition into the mid game pretty well because they've got Hellrider and either Falcon Wrath or Thundermaw Hellkite or something along those lines.
See, now typically this is when you're meant to, in any deck, tap 5 land and play a Thragtusk.
yeah, that's not really the 5 that KO was looking for there. So let's see what Mats has got in store for him.
So we now have a beast in play here.
That'd be Thundermaw Hellkite,
which certainly wraps up game 1 pretty well, and certainly after what looked like being a dodgy keep from Mats, he seemed to ease to victory there.